Hello, welcome to Graphic Policy Radio, where comics and politics meet. This is your host, Ilana Levin, and this is a comics podcast. This is a comics podcast for people who love sword lesbians, especially when the sword lesbians are in a brand new comic series that you can read at home right now for free. Today, I'm interviewing two exciting creators of the new series, Blade Maidens. Blade Maidens is a fantasy adventure romance starring two disaster mercenaries trying to get by. I was lucky enough to meet two creators of this through the Cerebro podcast, in fact. And then when I heard they were going to be starting their own comic series, I knew it was going to be great. And it is. And I really want folks to go check it out. So joining me today are Zoe Tunnell. Zoe is a trans lesbian writer who previously wrote criticism and essays for sites like WOWAC and Comics XF, and has transitioned for the second time in her life into writing comics proper with Blade Maidens. Welcome to the show, Zoe.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I listened to you talk about Sam from New Mutants on
my sweet boy.
He is your sweet boy. Oh, actually, it was your episode about Lil Wolverine, Laura.
Yeah, Laura. Yeah, my not sweet girl.
I know, but you helped me understand her in a deeper way.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And joining me is Zoe's co-creator. Valentine Smith is a writer, illustrator, and comics artist. They were shaped by a love of horror movies, music, and comic books, and continue to haunt the farmlands of Pennsylvania to this very day. Welcome to the show, Valentine.
Hi, it's lovely to be here.
And I actually also got to hear you speak on the Cerebro podcast about when Teresa Rourke Cassidy.
Yep.
We all love X-Men here.
Yeah.
We do,
yeah, we do.
So did you guys meet through the X-Men fandom and through Cerebro podcast or some other ways?
Kind of the X-Men fandom. We were like aware, like mutuals on Twitter, and then we ended up getting in a group chat with some other friends, and just kind of bonded that way, and ended up doing comics.
Yeah, it was definitely just like a mutual yelling about the X-Men on the internet.
Yep.
You heard it here, folks. That's how to get comics made, is to yell with your friends about X-Men on the internet, but then also make things.
It's the only way I know.
Before we started Blade Maidens, the first things we did were like a bunch of X-Men House Party fan comics that were really fun and cute. And then we were just like, hey, we should do our own thing.
Oh, yes, folks. If you have not seen their fan comics of the X-Men House Parties, they are extremely queer and like culturally savvy and funny and beautiful and hot. They're fabulous.
Yeah. That was 100% like a 2 a.m. like DM of like, hey, do you want to do this thing?
I actually remember exactly what happened.
Okay, tell me.
We were talking about something. We were DMing on Twitter and we were talking about something. And we were talking about Kate and Ileana, Kate Pride and Magic. And I was like, I just have a like scene in my head of like Kate whispering something in Ileana's ear, and then immediately them just looking at each other and porting out of the room. And you just went, write me that comic. Write me like a 2 to 3 page comic. Let's do it.
I was like, if you write it, I'll draw it. Yeah. That sounds like me.
I love it. For anyone who hasn't read those fan comics, if you have any familiarity with who the X-Men are at all, go check them out. Where's the best place to read them?
They're all uploaded on my website. So if you go to my website, you can go check them out there. They should be under the House Party little like selection in the portfolio. So,
but even before I saw the fan comics, I knew from just seeing the fan art that Valentine had done for Cerebrocast and just online that like when Valentine decided it was time to make comics, and it was clear that that time would be coming, that those comics would be fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
Can we tell the name origin real quick? Blade Maidens. Originally, the name, because we were thinking, like, we were trying to think of a name, and we were like, we don't want it to be bland fantasy. We don't want it to be blah. And I threw out Blade Bitches. And we were like, oh, that does sound cool. But then we both kind of, as we started working more, we're like, this doesn't really fit the vibe. Like, it's not as, like, in your face, like,
Yeah.
raw, like punk rock. And Valentine went, "What about Blade Maidens?" And I immediately snatched up the Twitter account and website.
No, yeah, I said, "How do you feel about it?" And then, and then you were like, "Yeah, I like it." I'm like, "Great! I already have the Twitter and Instagram. You go."
Oh
get the
yeah,
website.
you did it. That was yes.
Yeah, I did
Great.
it before you said yes because I was like,
no,
"This is great."
the one
It's
I
not
really
taken.
jumped the gun on was the copyright.
Oh yeah, and then you were like, "I submitted the copyright." I'm like, "Great. Okay, do we really need that?" Guess we do.
Yeah, turns out we do.
Turns out we've like done a whole fucking like giant project.
Yep.
Around it. Yeah. Just casual.
It's a great brand. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe nobody's taken it, especially because sword lesbians is such a thing.
Yeah,
That's the thing. That's the thing. I was like, no one has this. I'm getting it now because, of course, like once you have it in your brain, you're like, the minute I think of it, like it's going to get snapped up by somebody.
Yeah, I was Googling for like I went like 15 pages deep.
Yeah,
like
we
being like,
Googled.
there's gotta be something. And the closest thing I could find is there's like a unit in Warhammer or like in the lore of Warhammer, but it wasn't trademarked or copyrighted from everything I could find. So I was like, cool, great, ours, mine.
Yeah. And what the whole thing is that like Sir and Rowan, like that, if you were to take their number like off the tavern wall, like they are the Blade Maidens. That is those two being
Those
mercenaries.
two characters, yeah.
And their name, not the comic book name, but the name of the group will evolve as we go along and as we get people, which I think is lovely because like as their group identity changes, like their identity as a whole changes. And like Rowan and Sir will always be the Blade Maidens, but like that doesn't mean they can't also be something else.
Yep.
I love it. And I'm just really excited and electrified with this work. Had you made any comics before on your own?
Yes, it was definitely a thing I was kind of fighting for a long time because I always really liked comics, but I hadn't really taken the time to sit down and figure out how I wanted to make comics. So like I'd done comics in different styles, like coming up, in my teens, early 20s and stuff. But like I kind of pushed myself more in the illustration avenue rather than comics because comics are very labor intensive. And I had to figure out how I was going to make them, like I just didn't, it's a hard learning curve and now I can't stop. So, for better or worse.
I used to be good at drawing and I used to try to draw comics when I was a kid, and just the repetition of having to move forms and draw them the same, recognizable from panel to panel is just the hardest fucking thing in the world, especially back before digital was a thing. But even now, I mean, just wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, I'm glad you made the jump with us. And Zoe, had you written comic scripts before or fiction or?
I had written plenty of scripts that never ever actually got beyond being scripts. Being a writer originally, it was screenplays. I went to college for film and dropped out. And then switching to comics as I realized, oh no, that's the one I like more. And I'd written plenty, but Valentine was the first creative partner I had ended up working with that both of us clicked, and like our creative styles and like rhythm worked and it actually happened, which great for me. Like what a good first experience.
Hi.
Yeah. Finding collaborators is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. I feel like that's why when it's like, I've been trying to work with people for a long time off and on in different projects for different things. So when you find someone that you really, really click with or that you can communicate effective with, like I like hold on for dear life because you're like, don't leave me.
Yeah. I think that's actually one of the things that people starting out trying to make comics most struggle with is trying to figure out like, who are their people? How are they going to make art with other people?
Yeah.
And then I also feel for artists who are feeling like, everybody wants to come and partner with them, but what they really mean is like work for me for free.
Exactly. 1,000%. As an artist who like had gone through this and everything, like if you are patient, it will come, it will happen. You will find somebody who values you and values your voice and will listen to you when you're saying like, this would work better if it's this way,
Yeah. And just, from your fan works in X-Men, like I thought it was really, I thought it was really cool and exciting that you weren't going to just go in straight and do like a superhero book, that you wanted to play with a different genre, really, with what you're working on for your first work together.
Yeah.
What was behind that decision?
we didn't specifically say, like, we don't want to do superheroes, but I think we both kind of wanted, at least I know I did, and I assume Valentine did. If we were doing our own thing, I wanted it to be distinct. Like, I wanted it to be different than stuff we had already done.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and we, like, I remember the day that we decided to do something, we were just like, hey, we should do something. And we landed on the idea of, like, something kind of fantasy, like a fantasy romance or fantasy adventure or something. And then just kind of spun out from there.
Yeah, I think at least on my end, both with specifically like the band comics and stuff, I'm trying to fill a void or explore something that I don't think has been explored to a certain extent, or to be explored a different way. So with that, it was very character driven, and it was like, okay, well, like, if all of these people went to an after party, what would that be like, and how would they interact, and what would happen? Because they're probably not going to spend time on that in a superhero comic book, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
And then, what Zoe was saying for Blade Maidens, it became kind of what are we excited about? Like, what would we like to do? What would we like to see? Like, what kind of story would we like to read or be excited about putting out in the world for other people to read?
Yeah, I grew up on a steady diet of trashy fantasy books. And a lot of them, like one a series that I read all the time, was a bunch of Warhammer novels, the Gotrek and Felix series, which is about a mercenary duo traveling. And, like, you get your Xenas and your Hercules and, like, just, kind of the wandering hero mercenary, like, episodic adventure type deal.
Yeah.
And just realizing, there's, like, Xena's queer, but not, like, not queer in the way that, like, in the year of our Lord 2022, you might hope.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that might be something worth doing.
And it is. I have to say, if I haven't told you, like, it's not like it's like literally your debut comic, but this is like a piece that's early in your series. I don't think I've seen anybody start this strong. This is so fucking good. It's so high quality.
Good.
It's so well written. It's so gorgeous. The world is so interesting. I don't want to, like, talk about, print versus digital or whatever. But if you were like, oh yeah, this is going to be an image book, I'd be like, of course. You know what I mean? I think it's like that. So that's amazing to me. With the setting, Xena is obviously a really good parallel. I also feel like it's fantasy, but it does have so much of that sword and sorcery feel to it.
Yeah.
Even, like, with the way magic works, there's something hard boiled about it and gritty. And that really also deals with, like, things like class politics,
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a very conscious choice. I remember because the Magic Lesson short was written after The Hunt, and we were like, we gotta do some world building. We gotta, like, make some rules here, and realized that it would be really effective to tie that into Rowan's whole struggle with her own privilege and class, and realizing how much she has relied on that in her life.
Actually, this is a good opportunity to talk about one of the things that I think is really interesting that I hadn't spotted when I first began reading this comic on my cell phone, like from a link on Twitter, which was how much work is also below the page. I was trying to debate whether the word for it would be something like marginalia, but then it's so big, it's like maybe majornalia is more accurate.
I think we're calling it, like, supplemental material.
Yeah, basically,
What's the supplements for the day?
For folks who haven't seen it, so you have the way it's published is, each page is like a standard comic sized array of panels and sequential art. And then below it, you'd find either a journal entry, a diary entry, an entry from a history book. What are some of the other kinds of below the page text?
There's been a few conversation snippets. There's been there's one that I wrote for this week's. I mean, by the time this comes out, it will be this week's.
So good. Yes,
I was just cackling.
Good.
I wrote the most a love letter from a woman who says "I love you" on the second date thing that you have ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
Aww.
Yeah, I think there was a ledger, like, which is still a diary entry, but there was a ledger once. There was, the entries from like the Book of Arcanistry. We did their wanted posters at one
the wanted
point.
posters, the kind of monster manual entries on some of the creatures we're making ourselves.
Yeah, and they're all related to like what something in that page relates to what we've included underneath. And we found that as like if we're doing a page a week, how can we give people more content? How can we give them something more to engage with? And then it provides us with a unique opportunity to build out our world a little bit more. So like if you read more, you'll learn more. And then it kind of like fleshes out everything and like, makes everything a little bit more detailed. And it's good.
I really like it. It was a fun surprise for me because I just on my cell phone, I just hadn't noticed it. And then I'm like, oh, wait, there's more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also just like, I'm a sucker for that stuff. Like, if you give me any like book or something that is like an in-universe text of something, I eat that up like crazy. So I was like, absolutely want to have this with Blade Maidens.
Yeah. Are there any works that you feel like do a really good job of that?
There are a few that I can think of. Let's see if I can remember names. I mean, like, there's a lot, like, in, like, source books for RPGs. They'll often have, like, journal entries for, like, oh, here's this adventure or here's this setting, and I'm going to write this town from the perspective of, like, a traveling bard who has arrived in it or something like that. And tragically, one of the ones that I loved as a child is written by an author who has thoroughly trashed her legacy beyond any point of repair and is a total monster.
Oh, yeah. No, there's a few of those, but I think I know which one of those that might be in particular.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's the bad wizard lady.
Ew. Fuck that bitch. Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah. There was one of those supplemental, like, it's what they made the bad movies about, the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. There was like an actual like book about it. There was like an animal guide that I loved as a small child.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really smart way to build out world building in the story, when we know how much, like, I think like if it was just straight up prose, there might be this feeling of like, well, couldn't this be a panel? But like the way these are done, they are things that actually work better in prose because of the type of text they are.
Yeah.
So it feels like it's an artistic choice, not a convenience,
Yeah. And when we occasionally dip into like conversations that could technically like, be in a panel, it's usually something that like we want to have in there, but like it just wouldn't flow well. It wouldn't work. Like we had one recently that is like a background character, like the server.
Yeah.
At a tavern talking back to her boss. She's not the focal point of this scene.
Right.
It would not make sense. But we still want to have her get her moment. So
I feel like it's a nice thing to have those like B or C or D like plot lines of like, yes, this story is about Mel coming into the room, slamming down the chair and starting a conversation with these two. And of course the people around them are going to have a reaction, right? But that wouldn't come up. But of course, like she would be like, please stop slamming chairs.
You're going to break
You're going to break our shit. Like, please stop doing that.
Yeah, the murder hobos are just not good house guests.
No.
But your story does a great job of presenting why people would want to have sellswords versus relying on government systems. Like you have the great pitch right in there,
Mm-hmm.
In the marginalia / majornalia, no less. So talk to me about character design and character creation for you, because this, you're bringing in new characters. I'm really excited about this new third character who's coming in. But the core pair of Rowan and Sir are really fabulous. And I'd love to hear how they came into formation and for you both.
Zoe, do you wanna start this one?
Yeah. I can. Do you want me to get into like their background and you go into design?
Yeah, I'll jump in wherever.
Cool.
But I figured if you wanted to like go heavy,
I remember like originally there was some, and I truly wish I saved it and like knew the artist, because if I knew who they were, I would be crediting them every time it comes up. There was some like 3-panel Twitter comic I saw of like a princess being rescued by a knight from a dragon, being like, oh, thank you, sir, blah, 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 blah. and the knight taking off the helmet, and it's a hot lady, and like,
Oh,
being
yeah.
oh, haha, surprise, it's lesbians. And that being like, that's actually pretty fun.
Yeah.
And taking that as a starting point, but then tweaking it, be like, okay, well, instead of a knight, she's a mercenary. And she's a princess, but she's run away. Why would she run away? Because she's trans? And then, but no, transphobia, like, those stories are important, but that's also most of the stories we get, which is exhausting.
Yeah.
So having it be like, oh, well, maybe instead she just couldn't be the kick-ass, adventuring, like, magic sword-wielding woman she wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
And we each have, like, parts of ourselves in these characters.
Mm-hmm.
Sir and Mel have a lot of Valentine.
Yeah.
Mel especially.
Yeah. Mel's the dump character. I'm like, oh, let's give her this fatal flaw.
Really, Rowan is very important to me. Writing Rowan's story is something I never really thought I would be able to do. So being able to co-create like such a beautiful, wonderful character who is telling a flavor of trans experience that we don't get to see very much is just perfect for me.
Yeah, I remember early on, like, we kind of discussed when you're looking at like genre work and stuff, their overarching archetypes. So we originally, when we didn't name them, we just referred to them as Grumpy and Princess for a long time.
The first script was Grumpy and Princess.
And we were like, shit, we're gonna have to name them. And then we were like, okay, well, like, we want to explore a trans story where it's what Zoe said, not that she's trans, it's that she's not allowed to be the kind of woman that she wants to be. And that she wants to be doing these things, but she's locked into this society and this bureaucracy and that kind of thing. And this royal, like, line. And she wants to be outside climbing trees. Like, she wants to be like traveling. She wants to be able to do whatever she wants. And she's not going to get that. People. Yeah. That's a big part of Rowan.
Yeah. I love it. And, I see the connections with them and you guys knowing you, though I don't know either of you very well, but like I like these translations and that it doesn't have that like literal thing going on, but it really feels like they have a lot of lived in depth to them, despite the fact it's a new series,
Yeah, and I think that comes from Zoe and I. Like, we really are interested in character work, and we're really interested in kind of like, we have, everyone's backstory is totally established. We know where they've all been before we meet them in the comic. Like, we have all of that, and then we have going forward where we're going. So we kind of have all that fleshed out, and then we look at each other. We're like, okay, let's go play and see what we can do with this.
Yeah, our rhythm is very much like, we will just hop on a Discord call and like be like, cool, let's jump on at like 10 and go until 2 a.m. And we'll just be like, okay, we haven't talked about I almost said a character we haven't revealed yet.
Whoops.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, he will have been revealed by the time this comes out.
Yeah, let's talk about him.
Yeah, for it. Congrats, you get a surprise. Our fourth party member is Eldritch Miller, who is a trans mask monk. And he is just a rootin' tootin' cowboy with a heart of gold who loves to punch
beautiful.
things.
I love him.
I want to. Could you DM me like a screen cap of what he looks like?
Hold on. I will give you. Just give me 2 whole seconds.
We love him with all our hearts.
He is our sun boy. And that's the thing. The thing that originally when we started working on this together, it was very much a Sir and Rowan story. And then I think through both of our interests and influences, we were like, it would be cool if this was a pair story, but it ended up becoming a found family group story.
Yep.
Wholeheartedly. Like, once it got there, it went off the rails. And now we have like so much established that we're going to get to.
Yeah, there was like a 2-month period where we were like working at an absurd pace, fleshing everything out. But it's like Sir and Rowan will always be the main characters of the series. Like it's called Blade Maidens for a reason. They are the Blade Maidens.
Yeah.
But there are like other characters who are going to be like major significant characters who like could even be the lead of like an arc or something. Like having these like this cast and this group of people that come together and bond and fight and then come back after fighting is just we were already having fun and now we're just like, running wild.
Yeah, I think it made it infinitely better. It interested both of us like a lot.
Yep.
a lot. And I think it opened up the opportunity to tell a lot more stories that if we had just stuck with the two of them.
Well,
and I think
I just saw the picture and he's amazing and I'm really excited.
He's our short king too.
Oh yes, it's important to have the short kings.
Yeah, how tall is he canonically? I always forget.
5'4".
5'4". Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. And he's got like the tattoos, but also the monk arm wrap guards things happening.
Yeah, and all that is like lore related. So
I'm sure it is.
Super great.
You know? So you have the monk, and then Mel, who's a bard,
a werewolf bard.
Sorry. So if we were going to D&D character class this, what? I mean, I'm like, well, obviously this, but I'll let you guys put it in your words. What's Rowan and what's Sir's class in D&D?
Funnily enough, we actually have. I need to finish writing them, but we're planning some stuff for. It's our 1-year anniversary from announcing. Oh. We're gonna have 5e character sheets for everybody.
There'll be full character sheets.
So good call. Sir is pure fighter.
Sir's a fighter.
Yeah.
Through and through.
Yeah. Sir knows how to fight better than just about anybody, and she's content with having that be their specialization.
Yeah, they're like very like rooted in I liked working with my hands. I liked like physically fighting and feeling like things or like doing physical work. Like they take pride in it, they're good at it, and they don't need to do. They're very adverse, especially in the beginning, to like aspects of magic, and that's why like Rowan and Sir kind of butt heads a little bit. That'll eventually, maybe it'll change, but for now it's like Sir is very much like I want to use my fists.
Yeah,
and Rowan is I think because we had them at like level 4.
Yeah.
Rowan is like 2 levels in wizard, 2 levels in fighter.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Rowan is much better with her sword than has come across at the hunt. She's very good.
Oh, interesting. It's sort of like combat mage type specifically, because she's mostly uses her spells for like attack or defense or something, rather than like mind fuck spells or like illusions. Yeah,
she's very much on the arcanistry section of the magic triangle we have. She's very good at it and like can do some tricky stuff, but she likes conjuring base elements and using them as tools rather than the more finessey, like healing, shape-shifting, like stuff like that.
And all of that's related to like how when we were establishing where all of these people are from and stuff, we have Rowan, she's from a place that is very agricultural based, and therefore their magic is very based in elements and like conjuring water and doing different things like that. So it's more earthly and elemental based versus someone who may have grown up in like another part of Telos, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a city we'll maybe get to eventually, if not it exists, that it's run by a council of like undead merchant princes. And it's very scheming and constantly backstabbing. So like mind reading, disguise, like weather manipulation, that's the type of magic that is very prized up there.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, you really have this magic system built out. That's a specific one with its own images. Like when I saw the new character Mel come out, and she's got some great knuckle tats, but also 2 triangles on her hands. I was like, oh, is that related to the triangle magic thing? You don't have to tell me now if it's not time to know, but it already has me thinking about that,
Cool. Yeah, that's great.
That's awesome to hear.
Super great. Yeah. So the way that we came up with Mel was I did that Rowan pinup, right? And then there was a werewolf in the corner. And then we were like, what if we make the werewolf a character? And then suddenly the werewolf's a character and is a person, right? The same happened with Eldridge. where on that Mel cover, if you look at it, where she's sitting, she's like kicked back in a seat and like in the tavern, like her axe is on the table, everyone, and there's been like a bar brawl like all around her. And underneath her is Eldridge, like
passed out with a bloody nose from when
bloody
she
nose.
jacked in.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was very much like, okay, here's this guy and here he is. And I was like, I'm giving him top surgery scars. Like I'm doing this. And this is just like, I like to make up stories for the people in the background. We have a whole story for we're like, this is the bartender and she owns it and her wife is at home and her wife is this person and like whatever. Eldridge came out of like, that guy is passed out underneath her. They got into a fight. And now where would he go from there? And suddenly we have like a character.
Yeah, well, we were talking about like when we decided we wanted to expand the cast, we were like, all right, what sort of like fantasy archetypes do we want to play with? Like not just translate 1-to-1 because that's boring, but play with. And well, a monk is cool and it's very distinct from, all three of our existing characters. And we have no men on this team, maybe. And then you went like, what about this guy here?
Yeah, that I drew passed out underneath Mel.
Yeah.
And that kind of set up their relationship too right away. Is like this.
Oh, when we get to the Eldridge story, you will see their whole dynamic.
It's something that I love a lot. But yeah, we're talking about it and then it's like, oh, what if we did something with this guy? There he is. And he's hiding in plain sight the whole time. So pay attention to stuff. I'm always slipping stuff in that might come back later.
That is so neat.
Yeah.
In terms of like character design also, like you're blending some sort of traditional fantasy clothing with also some things that have a bit more of like hipster Western, specifically hipster Western. And so it has a really cool, unique look
I
in
love
it. And also combat boots. Like, how do you think about blending the different time period and elements and genres of fashion?
For me, it's definitely, it's almost like when Zoe and I were making Blade Maidens, it was very much like, what if we had one shot to make something, what would we make? And like, that has definitely been my approach to it, and being like, if I get to do this once, I'm going to do the stuff that I like and I'm going to do like things that interest me and things that I wish like existed or whatever. So when looking at like different fantasy stuff, I didn't want to be beholden to the way that, you get in your head a little bit and you think that a fantasy book should look. So I wear, a lot of black and combat boots all the time. So I was like, everybody's going to get combat boots. You know what I mean? I was like, I like this. I like the way this looks. I definitely have like folders of preference where it's like, if I like the way that something looks, I'm going to throw it in there. And then like, I'm going to try and give it to someone later in some way, shape or form. And then, also related to that character, and would that character like that, and how would they wear it? Would be tight fitting or loose? Like, do they need to move, or do they feel like looking good? Or does like, for Sir, Sir is very practical. Sir will pick up scraps of things and then kind of keep it around. Like Sir has a bandana most of the times because Sir can use that for multiple things, like cleaning things or just having, if they need a quick mask, things like that. And Rowan is very centered in her, like, I want to look a certain way. I want to present a certain way. I'm a little more choosy when it comes to my clothing than Sir is, because Sir will just wear anything. And then Mel is a werewolf who is constantly losing things and ends up in things now at this point where we meet her in her life, where she is just kind of, she has like a couple of things that are staples, but she's always kind of in whatever she was able to, like, she wakes up in the morning, change back to a human, and like has to go pick clothes off the clothesline because she was a werewolf last night,
Yeah. They have such great looks too. Like, I love their hair. I love the attitude in their faces. Everybody looks so cool.
Good. I'm trying.
How I view working with Valentine is Valentine is always going to make most people, like, there are going to be some people who do not look cool and hot because they're not supposed to. But otherwise, just about everyone is going to be cool and hot and, like, have great style. So it's just like, okay, fucking lean into it. That's going to be our world.
Everyone looks cool. Everyone has a cool hat. Keep putting hats on people. It's also related to, like, the hair too. Like, Rowan wants her hair long and she takes pride in her hair, but Sir is very much like, Sir's relationship with gender is like,
yeah, their gender is shrug.
Yeah. So, like, seeing them experience things and, like, things that, like, Rowan would be like, oh dear God, like, I could not do that in my body. And Sir's just like,
Yeah, Rowan has, like, a very intense, like, morning routine, taking care of her hair, shaving, and, like, you'll see her swap hair colors frequently because she likes to experiment.
And she can, and she should be able to.
One of the pluses of being a mage, you can kind of tweak your hair color pretty easily.
That's cool. But, like, they have such a unique look and feel. Like, when Sir shows up later with longer hair, it, like, was like, oh no, that's them. You know what I mean? Like, still had the attitude and and I love how you do bodies because everybody's really buff, but not buff in a way that feels like you are delusional. You know what I mean? Like, buff in realistic ways.
Yeah. They all carry it a little bit differently too, or I try to, play around with that.
Yeah, that matters a lot too. So Valentine, like, let's talk a little bit about how you sort of developed your style of art, because it's very recognizable. I would never confuse yours with anyone else's. And I can sort of be like, I have thoughts about some of these possible inspirations, but, I'd rather hear it from you. I mean, how did you sort of develop your particular style over time?
I mean, if we're going back, everything kind of clicked for me when I found ink. When I was in school, I was trying to figure out how the hell I was gonna, like, make things. And I think that's where, like, you start asking questions, right? You're like, how am I gonna make things? How do I want to make things? What feels naturally? And it comes from just drawing a lot in a lot of different ways and trying out stuff. For me, ink, both digital and traditional, really clicked. I liked having spot blacks. I liked having, like, I don't know, that balance felt really good to me. And especially, like, I'll use more, like, black and white, like spot black versus, like, gray wash, because I really like the contrast. So I feel like it's rooted in that. Like, even when I was doing, like, figure drawings and stuff, like, I was using ink and working with that rather than, like, doing anything. Like, I haven't used pencil in a really long time. But I used to paint before that. Like, I like painting. Like, I like acrylic and oil. I like doing that, but it just wasn't, the process wasn't it. And with ink, I don't know, I could just, like, get lost in it in a way that I couldn't get lost in other things.
So you're not working digitally from the start?
I wasn't, no. Like, I was using digital and I knew how to, like, do things digitally. Like, I used to work in Photoshop. I don't anymore. I use Procreate and Corel Painter. But I'm using, like, traditional, like, ink brushes on those programs. But yeah, no, like, I have a bottle of India ink and I have my brushes, and I typically use, like, a 1 and a 6 for inking. One for, like, my fine details, and then, like, that India ink pen for, like, fine details, and then the larger brush for all of your, like, textures and things like that, and, like, large areas of blacks. But, well,
no wonder I like your work so much, because I'm a sucker for traditional media.
Yeah. And the big thing for me too is that, like, when I was like, okay, I definitely want to explore things in ink, but I don't want my digital to feel different than my traditional inks. So it was finding that balance of being like, how am I going to make this look like it could be either or, or like I could have done it traditionally and I did scan it in and then colored it digitally.
The digital colors are really great. Like, you use a lot of, like, sort of flat colors that you have on different planes from each other. And they're really beautiful palettes.
Yeah. That definitely comes. I was like, where did that? And it definitely comes from like reading like 80s X-Men at a very formative age of like having the like different planes of flat color because I like the way that looks and it's easier for my brain to comprehend. Like, you know, there's different color theory in which you put, you know, like, you know, everything gets cooler and then brighter in the front and everything like that. But it separates things for my brain in a way that like is comprehensible in a way that other things aren't.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
But I also think it kind of has this neat sort of mashup, almost collage aesthetic, the way it's combining the traditional medium with the digital color. Like, there's a lot of the time when people do digital color, like they're doing it so they can do all kinds of like gradienty things or whatever. But like, and you use a technique, but you're not like, you're treating it that you're like, no, we're doing it flat. And we're choosing interesting colors rather than colors that are limited to the traditional palette of what comics could print back in the day. But it's like interesting colors, but they're flat.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the benefit in the like, what's the word? Though I don't know, maybe the joy. The joy is that you can use a really bright magenta that like you couldn't use before, or would be really hard to mix, you know, in paint, or like you can't have all these options, and you can't do color studies as like quickly using paint as you can, where you just like swatch and drop to figure out what's going to work the best.
You also have like a zip, what I would think like looks like a zipatone backgrounds that you use as well, that are like for the dot. What is it, like Ben dots?
Ben-Day dots.
What is there? Are those digital, or are you using zipatone, or how are those?
Yeah, so basically it's the same process that you would use traditionally as I do digitally. So traditionally you would get a sheet of the dots and then you place them over your image and you cut away with an X-Acto, right, of the places that you don't want them. And then the dots stay where you want them. It's the exact same thing on a digital file. I have a sheet of the dots and then I just cut away with an eraser that is flat, like a digital X-Acto, just erasing out what I don't want.
I love it. The old school zine person in me like sees that, and it makes me feel very warm and nostalgic. And I think it's sort of your trademark. Like that style is your trademark, and then obviously the way you do the upper lips are like very much the stylizations that I don't see anybody else.
Yeah, it's just trial and error of figuring out, how do I want to do this? I guess this works. Let's see where it goes.
Was there like a moment in the development of your style where you were like, I have decided the upper lip is the most important part of the face?
I don't know. I was like, there it is. Now, I don't know. It's like the mile markers where you're like, okay, I know where I am.
Interesting. I really love it. I feel like it's consistently like it's sexy. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Cool. Sick.
Good.
That's what I'm going for.
Have
kind of the vibe.
The sexy vibe.
I want to talk about a particular panel that I sent to you, and I'll post it in the when I do like the show has graphics that go up with it. There's a panel on page. Let's see, page September 1st, 2022. I don't know. Blade Maidens. Yes,
page 3 of
There's
Strays.
a panel, the very, very top in the center.
Yep, those are just two tavern patrons.
Two patrons' mouths with the blank word bubbles speaking up close. It's like whispering in the background, I think, right? They're like talking behind.
Yep.
It's such a cool, subtle technique. And until I was looking at it on my big screen, like when I was looking at it like on my phone earlier, I like wasn't even reading the image right. But now I see it and I'm like, ooh. Talk to me like how you just make these decisions about like these atmospheric kind of panels that are not dialogue based.
With those ones specifically, like if you were to look at the script that Zoe had expertly written, those little panels were an addition that I threw in. So originally it was 1, 2, 3, which is days later, and then Sir and Rowan talking, and then Mel, we see Mel against, silhouetted by the door. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do the story of my life. I'm like, Zoe, I'm adding panels.
So that's the thing we figured out over this is like, going in, I was just like, I always want to be nice. Like, I want to be like thoughtful of the artist and like not crowding too much, and like, okay, like I'm not gonna do. And then no matter what I do, Valentine would be like, hey, can I add like 2 or 3 panels of just like details?
Apparently I really like doing details, and for this one up here, and I did them just flat color to kind of, it was ways of saying that this tavern is populated, things are going on in the background, things are existing. They're not exactly important, but they're just atmospheric. So it was like, I'm going to add these to make this atmospheric so you can tell that this is like a tavern and people are doing things and there's drinks being poured and people are having discussions. They're not important to you, but it is happening.
That's great. And I feel like there's a lot of sort of, in certain pages, you'll see this combination of like quiet and loud alternating a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, visually, it's about balancing the page and drawing attention, especially in comics, because there's so much in comics that you can do that you can't do in other mediums, where you can lead the eye or draw attention and do certain things. And there's like 20 different tools that you can use to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you know, I didn't sort of do this in the origins, but like, I'd love to hear like what, you know, I'll ask Valentine first, like, what is your background with like getting into comics as a reader?
My background is 1,000% the X-Men. They were like the first comic book that I had read. They were introduced to me when I was very, very young, by my dad, who was a collector beforehand. And when I got interested, you know, I got to read some of his comics or pick them up, you know, in the comic store in the church basement of like 10 for $1 or whatever. So like, it was very formative, and that stuck around. And even when it goes away, it comes back. So yeah, I was definitely reading a lot of 70s, 80s X-Men for most of my life.
Love it. What about you, Zoe?
For me, it's not the X-Men. I got in when I was like 12, 13, via, somewhat regrettably now, the Ultimate Universe of Marvel Comics.
You couldn't help it. You were 12 when it happened. Like, that was who it was for.
Exactly.
I remember those days.
I was the perfect audience for it, like the laser targeted. And from there, I got into Marvel proper, and then from there, just, you know, reading everything. I actually didn't end up getting into X-Men. I read X-Men, but I didn't become like the type of lady who has a tattoo, which Valentine designed, by the way, on my forearm of Kate and Ileana's like iconography. But until right like the year before I came out, and they are kind of one of the things that pushed me out the door.
So good.
That's really great. Yeah. Well, this story is very much not a superhero story. I definitely see X-Men influence in this, in terms of the story as well as the art, that I think would appeal to people who maybe don't usually read fantasy, but are maybe just coming in it from X-Men people. And, you know, what are some things that you feel like you guys both drew from the X-Men into this work together?
Do you want to go first?
Me?
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're going to go for 3 hours.
No, hey, I can't help it. Let me see. For me, what did I draw from the X-Men? I feel like with the way that it went and the way that we're going, there were certain, like, definitely that this ended up being more of a group and a rotating cast, that we're all very, very excited about. Having those kids kind of be the themes that were touched upon while the X-Men were a superhero comic book there are some carryover themes in ours. And I feel like, especially with how this is starting to develop, and I know we're only on story 2, so I'm talking about things that, you know, y'all won't see for a while yet. But we wanted to bring back kind of the issue episodic feel, where like you could, when they were making comics back when I was reading, it was like, if you should be able to pick up a comic and know who these characters are and kind of go into it, and you'll get a story and you'll have a good time. And then if you never pick up another comic book again in this series, you'll have that and you'll know what you read and who these people were. So that was something that we really wanted to achieve. So each issue in the first 6 here, each is a full, complete story where our group of varying numbers comes across a thing happens, and then it ends. And it does continue. Like, it will build upon one another, but like, they'll go to a place and you'll see what happens. And then you have a nice day.
At one point, one of our stories was prompted by Valentine saying, what if there was a town that was weird?
It's my favorite fucking thing.
Yeah, it's actually ended up being my favorite in this first like arc that we have.
Yeah, we were like, and that one is love letter.
Yeah,
that one's
that
like
one's
the
very
love
Claremont.
letter to old Claremontonian. Like, it is. We were like, oh, this is, and we're like, is this getting too far? No, let's just lean in and let's just do it. So like, we went in hard, and it is very like almost like old school Excalibur in a way in my heart. And I'm very excited to get to it.
As for like what I think for me, the big thing, like, rather than intentionally going like, oh yeah, like, they're hated and feared, because we very intentionally didn't want like homophobia and transphobia are not a thing in Telos.
Yeah.
Like, people may be shitty to, like, Rowan's parents are shitty to her about wanting to be a very specific type of woman, but we didn't want to tell stories based around queer pain. Because there's so many of those, and also we get enough of that in our own lives. But I think the way so many of the X-Men that are beloved start out as very big messes.
Ooh.
And are always to some degree messes, because that's the fun. But like, they get better, they grow, they find a family, they find people who will be there for them. And are able to level out to a degree.
Yeah. They like pass around the mess brain cell.
Oh God, do they?
They 1,000% do. But the thing is that the other ones will be there to like pick them up, right? And it's like always like they're all influencing each other in different ways and kind of making each other better or worse. It's great. Yeah.
I also feel like there's this idea of, they're kind of like outsider insiders who are, traveling with their, building their own community. I think like the way that some of the rhythm between like the action and the interpersonal stuff, I think is really, X-Men.
Yeah. I think that there's a balance to that, and there's a character building. Yeah. And I think that with the outside, for right now, especially, like, we have Rowan and Sir, like, they are kind of wanted, and they're kind of trying to keep a low profile, and they're not interacting. Fugitives. Like they're trying to keep low. And the same with Mel, because the page will be out tomorrow. Mel is also wanted. So you have these three people who are like wanted for different things, but different people who are trying to kind of keep a low profile. So it's not like they're like not on the outside.
Yeah. And but you're right. It's important that it's not a hated and feared thing. It's like, it's more subtle than that.
Yeah. There's some hated and feared. Like, I mean, Mel is a werewolf. Some people don't like werewolves and are like, they're fucking scary and will eat me. So like, there's a little bit of that, but it's never like, that's not going to be a focal point for us. That's not the story we want to tell.
Yeah. Mel's relationship to her werewolfhood is very interesting to like balance with. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, she's a fucking werewolf. Like she's
a fucking werewolf, and she has Howl Baby tattooed on her knuckles. She knows what she is.
She went in hard. She was like, hell yeah.
And you have sort of your own story for how werewolfism works and that,
Yeah, that was another thing. When we're like playing with these things that have stories or systems that are built before us, and we're like, okay, well, how does that work in our world? How did that come to be? Like, with the werewolves, you're like, oh my God, what if it was an experiment gone wrong, and then lycanthropy got out, and now it's like a thing that nobody can really cure, they just kind of like exist with it, and they're like, well,
and the mage, like upper crust, like, like the scholars and academics are like kind of keeping the fact that it's a little bit their fault Like,
Yeah.
let's keep that one
But it's
under
so it's
wraps
like
Yeah.
loudly
to let people
And the
think it's like
way-
from the
real.
gods.
Yeah.
Oh God,
And
no.
yeah.
real. You're like,
No,
no,
why would
sorry.
you say that?
But, and like, I think that stuff comes from us, like, just talking about it. And we're like, okay,
Yeah.
well, like, we pose questions to one another where we're like, well, why would that be? And how would we make that? And then a big part of it was we came up with our pantheon. And we were like, okay, so we have this pantheon that we've created now, and like we can play with them, and like how did they interact, and what does that mean, and like how would it make this thing? Maybe these people were made from like doing other stuff, Yeah, it's wild. Yeah. Oh, and the moon lore.
We've had a ton of fun playing with like folklore and gods
Yeah.
and history, and that's going to be like once Eldridge gets in the mix,
Mhm.
he is a monk of a specific order of monks that
Mhm.
worships what was once a god of war that, through circumstances we'll get into at some point, is split into twin goddesses of war
Mhm.
that are cover different aspects. So once he shows up, that there's a little more direct through line to like, oh, this man is in direct line with gods, like,
Mhm.
and they will start to play a little more of a role in the story.
Yeah, but you can even see it early on here, like when Rowan swears earlier, she says Mother Arbor. Like Mother Arbor is someone.
Yeah.
Like it's someone who, because like where she's from and everything, and they pray to like, the goddess of the earth and everything, and that's Mother Arbor, and that's why her swears would be related to like she says by the
Right.
roots a lot, which I fucking love. So we came up with that, and I lost my mind. Yeah. So it's very cool. I love it.
And they're even like, Mother Arbor isn't her, like, her name is Guyvenia, but she has multiple titles, like a lot of gods. So Rowan most commonly calls her Mother Arbor because that's what they called her in Verdana, where she's from.
Yeah.
Are we going to get some maps at some point?
Oh, yes. So here's one so we tried to make a map on a call one time, and I kept being overly critical.
Yeah, I paid 5 whole American dollars.
Yeah.
For the fancy version of this fantasy map creation like software, which seems really good. Like it seems like an excellent program. And I was like, here, I'm going to screen share and I'll pilot it and you tell me what to do. And Valentine took that as an invitation to just play Mystery Science Theater while I tried to make art.
I couldn't help it. They were all lumpy.
Oh, they're maps. They're supposed to be lumpy.
I know. And of course, I'm like, no, bigger, no, smaller. That's not right. So yes, there are maps. There will be maps
we'll have
of
maps.
the continent and everything that we are like thinking about and working on. They will exist in real form and not just me yelling.
Heckling.
Yeah, I was heckling. I fully admit to that.
That's a lot of fun, though.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
like, you guys have had a pretty intense pace that you've kept through time, and it sounds like there's a lot more stuff coming up. Like, what is it like running this series entirely yourselves, and keeping it updated and publishing it yourself?
Well, I do want to say before anything else, there is a third member of Team Blaidens.
Team Blaidens, yeah.
His name is Jason Large, and he is the nicest man on earth.
Yeah.
He's a friend of both of us, who is a genius at web design.
Yeah.
And he volunteered to help us make the website. When I say help us, he volunteered to make the website.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely gorgeous. Like, I can't believe we have such a good website. Oh my God. And he helps with everything, and we would not be able to keep the machine running as smoothly as we do without that wonderful human being.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be nearly as pretty.
Oh God, no.
Like the if you go on our website, like the full like title banner up there, which is what I had drawn up a cover, and I'd thrown that banner on there, and like literally 2 hours later, Jason was like, "I just did up a template of this thing where the swords fly in. Is this cool?" And I was like, "Yes, please do that for everything."
Yeah, it's
I love
fun.
it. Yeah, and like our new like homepage and everything, like I'll come to him with like a laundry list of things. I'm like, can we make this happen? Like a dream list. And I'll be like, well, some of them, but like you might have to compromise on some places. But he like makes everything look gorgeous. It's great.
Yeah.
And I
He's
get
a
to
wizard.
make, like I'll make, I made all the fonts. Like I drew all of the letters and fonts that exist, but Jason implements that and then puts it and sizes it and makes everything look, cohesive and gorgeous, like on the site, which is something that I'm not skilled in at all. Like I can do things, but yeah, he makes that thing sing.
But I mean, like,
but yeah. So,
Oh, yeah.
yes,
Sorry,
that's
there was
fine.
another part of that question.
we got distracted.
We had
He
to
is
distract with
awesome,
praising
I can see
Jason.
We're like Jason because he doesn't get enough. Like he's like the person who does all that work behind the scenes, and then like
truly, he has but I'm gonna plug
Do
Jason's
it.
thing right now. He's got a business, Studio Ghibli, which has an adorable Studio Ghibli inspired logo. That I don't know if he's currently taking like clients or anything, but he has a website and Twitter account that you should go follow. And if you need a website and he's taking clients, you're not going to find better.
Yeah, really. But with the whole series and everything, it's like when we originally pitched this to each other, we're like, okay, we want to work together. Okay, we're going to do this. We talked about, should we pitch this somewhere? Should we do it on Webtoon? Should we do it on Tapas? And the end point ended up being that we both didn't want to be beholden to someone else to tell a story that we wanted to tell. Yeah. And if we're going to do all this work and we're going to put like literally our heart and soul into it, like we're going to do it the way we want to do it. We're going to have like a lot of queer themes. We're going to have a lot of this stuff. We don't want someone saying we can't do things either thematically or censor us in different ways, shapes, or form. Like I really wanted to try and do a lot of hand lettering for it. And we wanted to have at the end of the hunt, like Sir is stitching up like their arrow wound and they're topless. Like we didn't want to have people telling us no, pretty much. We wanted to do it ourselves.
It's such a great scene. Like there's there's tenderness to it. And it's also hot. But it's, well,
extremely.
But that's the thing though, is that like, we have these moments in here that it's like, like number one, if you are a mercenary and you have been shot with an arrow, like you're not going to play modesty, especially if you're Sir. Sir doesn't care. Sir's just going to stitch themselves up. And then of course, like Rowan is going to be a little flustered about it because Rowan ran away with Sir. Like Sir showed up and Rowan ran away because she was like, "Oh
Rowan
my god,
has had a crush on Sir since day one."
Obviously,
you are capable. You are everything I want to be. Please teach me to be like you. Also, I have a crush on you. So like she's gonna be a little flustered.
It's the very classic like queer. Do I want to be you or have sex with you, or is it both?
Yes.
Yep.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in this book. Listeners at home.
And we talked about like Valentine is a machine in a terrifying way. Like the speed with which like they'll finish a page and like send it to me and I'm like, holy shit, this looks so gorgeous, this is great. And she'll go, yeah, thanks. And then like an hour and a half later, they'll send me thumbnails for the next page.
Honestly, for me, like that's the best way, like because I'm doing everything, because I'm doing like inks and colors and lettering, when I do like a page, if I go and do the thumbnails like right away, it almost like keeps my momentum going. So it's like, okay, I don't feel like I finished something. I feel like I finished and started the next thing so that way I can take a break and then come back to it and be like, oh yeah, I didn't leave myself on like a blank page. You know what I mean?
It was really important to me because like I am not downplaying my own contributions to the Blade Maidens machine. I have done quite a bit of writing.
So he does
writing.
a lot.
But the amount of work Valentine does is absurd. Like drawing, lettering, coloring, all on their own. And it was really important. I tell her all the time, I'm like, if we miss a week, if we miss 2 weeks, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Because the last thing I wanted this to ever become is like burnout or something that feels like an obligation.
Yeah. We were both very aware of that from the beginning, of being like, hey, if we need to take breaks or do whatever, we will make that happen so that the both of us feel that we are putting out our best work.
Yeah.
And that's like, too, is like us, all of the stories and all of the characters that we make together.
Yep.
It's 1,000% us bouncing off of one another and yes-anding to like the nth degree. Every single story that we've made has come from one of us saying like, pitch, what if this happened? Or like, pitch, what if these two characters like interacted? What would that look like? And then the other person will come back and say like, oh, like that would be really interesting, or that wouldn't work, but this might work. So everything is very collaborative and building on top of one another and making it the best that it can be. And both of us very early on, like, let go a lot of, if you find somebody that you can just let go of like a lot of ego stuff with and just be like, no, we're going to make this together and we're going to make something really cool. And you want to do that. Like, that's the best fucking thing.
And I do want to clarify the pitch. That's not a joke. We will just like, will be talking and just go, pitch.
I started doing that in text form. I would be like, pitch. What if we had a werewolf? And you were like,
or like,
yes.
I'll get a text at 3 a.m. that's just pitch in capital letters.
Yeah. Cause Mel, when we were making her, it was, Zoe, I want to do a werewolf. I want to have a werewolf. And then we were talking about it and she's like, well, like, how can that be new? Or how can that be interesting? And Zoe was like, what if this werewolf was a bard? Like, what if she was just like a traveling bard and like this happened to her? We were like, ooh, that's interesting. Where can we go with that? And that's how Mel was born. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then like when we're making new stuff, it's like we look for like certain gaps or like breaks that we have that we can like do something with.
Yeah, it never feels like we want to like, we're not trying to check off like a checklist. Like, okay, we have to have, all right, we've got, 2 lesbians, we have to have a bi, and we're getting LD, so we need to have a trans man. Like, it's just, we want characters that feel like we are missing a perspective on this world, and we need to have this voice join the chorus of our characters.
Yeah, or it's something different, or like with like all of these people. The other realistic thing is that you when you're adding new people, it's like you want them to feel like they're staying for a reason, or that they genuinely like one another. You know what I mean? So you have to come up with reasons that happens. It feels organic. So that's how everyone kind of ends up getting shaped, is their motivations and like where they were and where they're going, pretty much. So, yeah.
There's another character who, the final member of our party, who will not be revealed by the time this comes out.
Yeah.
Who her motivation was something that we really struggled with for a while. We were like, why would she stay with these idiots? And when we finally cracked that, it was just like, oh, this opens up like 11 new doors in this story.
Yeah,
like,
and it's the best feeling though when that happens, because it's like, and there are things that like where they come right away, but I think there's also a value to having something and being like, there needs to be a reason for this, and knowing there has to be a reason and letting it simmer for a while, and then just kind of letting it come, especially when you don't need to like that. Like this is issues down the road now, right?
Yeah,
so like we have time,
a long time down the road.
Yeah, especially at the pace that like we're going and everything, but like it's like. Yeah, it opened 11 new doors, and we were like, oh, this is so exciting, and this strengthens this, and then you can like make everything kind of like interact and commingle, and the story could become stronger for it.
Like for an example, sorry to be talking so much.
No, say it.
For an example, we cracked the code on this character while we were wrapping up the hunt.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a bit that we added to the hunt that now ties into what will happen with that character back down, like way down the road.
Yeah.
That wasn't there when we originally wrote and planned the hunt, because that new facet of the story where it's going is like, oh, we can set that up way earlier now.
Yeah, it was we can set that up way earlier, and it was this character's like interaction.
Yep.
Like we had all these we have all these loose, to varying degrees, detailed and vague aspects of everyone's backstories that kind of, it's almost like you're like doing like a marble sculpture, and you're like hammering away to like kind of chisel it down into like the final form, and everything is like, that's how we're building this. So we ended up building more into Sir because we had figured out something else with another character, which is so fucking rewarding.
That is really neat. I'm really looking forward to getting to see that. You guys have so much planned ahead. Like, how much is like, are you just releasing a page a week and there's other stuff that's actually backlogged and made, or is it just in writing with some mock-ups, or?
It's in writing primarily. We're a few pages ahead.
Yeah.
But we don't have like a huge buffer.
That's tough, man.
No.
Yeah.
but we like co-plot, and Zoe writes a lot. So we have basically we have each arc that we kind of have planned out, because this is like, if we were to pitch somewhere, having these like succinct kind of like seasons of 6 issues each. We have 4.
Yeah.
So if you do the math, that's how much we have like planned out. And that's like not including the shorts.
And of those, like, we have volume 1 fully like scripted.
Fully
planned.
Scripted.
But then volume 2, we have like plotted, and then from there it gets a lot more hazy.
From there we have like the general idea. We know what the issues are going to be about. We know what they're going to be like kind of focused on, and then the actual like finite plotting and scripting will get done at a later date.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's an incredibly ambitious project.
And
like I've said, just the quality is amazing. I mean, and you guys are clearly having so much fun doing it together.
Oh God,
as well.
Yes. 1000%.
And you just feels like it could just kind of keep going and expanding.
That's pretty much like we have both made a pact that, like, we will continue to make Blade Maidens until one of us decides we don't want to make Blade Maidens anymore.
Yeah. And that's, again, what we talked about with the pace, where we were like, if we need to take breaks in order to preserve the long term, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. Like, we're going to keep doing this. And again, this is while we were like, should we take this somewhere? Well, they might tell us we only have 6 issues and that's it. And then it's done. And then we can't make anymore. We're like, that's the opposite of what we want. We want to be able to tell as many stories in this world as we can, and we will negotiate the rest later.
Yeah, I think that's a really good attitude to have.
Yeah. And we're like, we can always make other stuff, but like this one is ours, and we're going to have as much fun with it as we can.
Yep.
And I'm really loving it, and I'm so glad you both are able to join me for the show. Oh shoot, I'm sorry. I should have asked this earlier, but Zoe, as someone who came from doing critical work predominantly, and obviously, you wanted to do storytelling because this was stuff that you worked on in college. Like what was it that kind of made you feel like, okay, now is the time I could start writing fiction in a way that I will be putting it in front of other people's eyes?
Well, I've always wanted to do it. Like, for me, it was less a feeling of like, I'm not ready yet. Like, because I feel like you're never ready. Like, you got to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And I was lucky enough to have Valentine go like, yeah, let's make something together. Sure. Originally, it was like a Power Girl fan comic, and then the X-Men fan comics. And by then, we had our rhythm and went to Blade Maidens. But I was getting a little burnt out on the critical side. It's just like, comics are a kind of relentless machine in all aspects, like creative, like if you're working in weekly, like, releases, but also critically, like you got, a bunch of reviews, especially if you're working for multiple sites. And it was also getting like a very cynical and mean a lot of the time, like, not beyond, like, you should be able to critique like things. That's fine. You don't have to be nice like all the time. But very much, I found myself feeling less at home in that space, and more like as Valentine and I were working more and more together, I was like, oh, I'm getting like 1,000% more fulfillment and satisfaction out of making these stories. It feels like this is the time to make the shift from that to this.
That's great. And we're thankful for it. And, it's always inspiring to see that as well. As much as, I'm a critic, and criticism is art. And if it wasn't, I wouldn't
absolutely.
be doing it. But I'm always happy to have people talk about finding themselves feeling comfortable doing different things that, that they haven't maybe done in a public way before. So I know that's true for me. I'm working on that as well. So.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I feel like just making stuff is, I would think everybody should engage in the act of making.
Make stuff.
in some way, shape, or form. You don't have to show it to anybody. Like, you can just do it for yourself. Like, when I'm doing these pages, like, the actual act of doing them and drawing them and coloring them is the part of the process that's for me. And then I know the minute like they're gone from me and they're uploaded, like, everybody else can have, that's for everybody else to have. Like, I had the process, it's hard to explain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get
it. Yeah.
And I'm so glad you both were able to join me for the show. Is there anything else you guys want to promote while you're on here?
Yeah. So much Blade Maidens.
Yeah, just
go read Blade Maidens.
I want to use my plug time to just really reiterate, you gotta read Blade Maidens.
Blade Maidens at blademaidens.com.
Yeah. At Blade Maidens on your local Twitter and Instagram.
I love it. So tell our listeners, where's the best place for them to keep up with you online?
The best place to find me, Twitter, Instagram, is Valentine MSM1TH, just Valentine M. Smith, with the 1 instead of the I. You can always check out, I upload a lot of like our short comics and things like that to my website, valentinesmith.com. I also have a store there where you can get prints, shirts, buttons, patches, what have you.
Buy a Howl Baby hat.
Yeah, I made Howl Baby hat.
It's really because she's the werewolf, but like it feels like it predates her maybe a little.
It was her knuckle tattoos, and I was like, I want a Howl Baby hat.
Yeah, we were like, I made it. We want this horny disaster by werewolf to have Howl Baby on her fingers.
Yeah, the knuckle tat discussion took a while. Like we were like, oh, what could it be? And we're like, no, is this too on the nose? And we're like, no, her as a person, like she would just fucking like become a werewolf and be like, I'm gonna go so in on this.
Yep.
I'm gonna we talked about, I think at one point it was Moon Baby, and then I came up with Howl. I added that full moon, and then I came up with Howl, and then you said Baby, and then I was like, what if it's Howl the Baby? And then we were like, yeah. Yep. We're like alone on our like separate couches, like just like vibrating because we've tattooed a werewolf eye. But yeah, like there's Blade Maiden stuff there. You can get prints. The Howl Baby hats. I did a whole button set. And I usually include like postcards and stuff of our covers. So it's a good time.
Well, Valentine has a long history of making really cool merch. So you should check out their merch for fandom-y stuff, as well as Blade Maidens, and just like buy lots of cool looking things that you can purchase there.
Yeah, you can get my stuff there. And then I also did a variety of shirts for the podcast we were all on, Cerebrocast. A lot of the like in podcast jokes of like Tessa analysis and
Dating Polaris is gay and is on a t-shirt, and Valentine designed it.
And you can wear it in your very home right now. Mm-hmm.
Zoe, where can our folks keep up with you online?
I don't have a store, so sorry, no merch. But you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Blankzilla, BLANKZILLA.
And this is Graphic Policy Radio. I can tell folks we've got some really good upcoming episodes of comics writers and artists joining us, as well as Deep Space Dive, which is our Deep Space sub-podcast with some really good guests coming on.
Now that I'm watching Deep Space Nine, I gotta dive into your show.
Our show is 100% spoilers, so you should definitely listen to it. But like, unless you're someone who doesn't care about spoilers, and which is fine, I used to not care about spoilers at all. You're going to want to listen to it after the watch through. But have fun with the space lesbians.
Oh, I already am.
I think one of the gayest things I've done in my life personally is when a friend of mine wanted to be Jax for Halloween, and I like drew on with like a makeup pencil like the designs of her face on her.
Oh wow.
Perfect.
Yeah, right? Like that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah, there's so many of those.
That is a labor of love.
That is, yeah.
Amazing. I'm so glad we all have good
Yeah.
taste in television and comics.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's also a playlist for that you guys have on the Spotify playlist, which is,
Oh, yeah.
is this like for the comic in general, or is this Mel's playlist specifically?
That's Mel's.
Okay.
There will be one for every character that is in progress.
Well, we originally were going to do them like together.
yeah.
And Valentine is extremely good at picking out like mood playlists for characters.
Yeah. It's one of
it got,
my favorite pastimes.
yeah, it got to the point where I was just like, oh, I don't need to have a hand on this particular wheel.
Okay.
Yeah. I was like, sorry, Zoe. So it's like, no, keep going. And I'm like, okay.
Well,
yeah, I 100% have like there every song on there for one way, shape, or form, and that's with all the weird playlists that I make. Like, has a reason for being there. Like, it is about somebody, or it is a relationship, or there is a line. Like, I did a whole like Teresa playlist, and there are so many themes of like recovery and like God,
wow,
and like moody shit in there. Like, I get very proud when I like nail a vibe of a song for somebody.
Well, I'll get to check this out
Yeah.
and pretend that I'm familiar with contemporary music, which is, I know people will be.
I also listen to a lot though. Like, I'm very like, in addition, like I grew up, I play several instruments. Like, I'm very interested in music. My mom has a big love of music. So that was like passed on to me. So I just listen to a lot of stuff. So there is like older stuff and newer stuff and like mix of genres. So everybody should find something that they kind of vibe with on there.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
And, but also I can feel like I know about things that I don't.
Yeah. Just for you.
For me. Well, thank you for joining us. You could, of course, folks who find me online and specifically on Twitter, a little bit too much, at ELANA_Brooklyn. That's ELANA_Brooklyn. And graphicpolicy.com for all your comics news and reviews. And as we like to say, keep it geeky.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.